Hello and welcome to the Mary Poppins of Startups live show. So today we have a special edition. Off to you, Shima.
Thank you, Nelly. Today we're having reversed roles. So today I'm hosting and I'm interviewing Nelly. And I know most of you will already know Nelly, but I think she's really worth an introduction or a reintroduction to you. Nelly started as a software engineer and transitioned to the Mary Poppins of startups, helping startups and small businesses turn their dreams into launching new products into reality. And together, when you work with Nelly, you design happy and productive workplace playgrounds. I love that word. You create workplace playgrounds. You can just feel the joy emanating from that. And in that playground, you can navigate roadmaps, communications, productivity issues, and lead initiatives, and more. So you'll hear a lot more about how Nelly actually does this today. And please feel free to get in touch with Nelly at any point to share your story also on her podcast after this podcast. So today it's an anniversary show. We're celebrating 3 years of Athena Leaders and 1 year of the Mary Poppins of startups. Thank you, Nelly, for everything you're doing. And I have to say, I'm really quite excited to dig deeply or at least more deeply into what you've been doing. So can you tell us a little bit more about the sorts of clients you've been working with over the last year, and maybe some of the common challenges that you've seen among these startups?
Yes, definitely. Thanks for being on the show, Shima. Of course, we've known each other for many years, so I'm really pleased that you are interviewing me today on our special show. Whenever I work with a lot of clients, mostly in the startup world, is an area where I'm really passionate about. I have a soft spot for early stage all the way to seed level startups, because that's where I see the birth of ideas and this thought of, you wake up one day, you have nothing, you really want to change the world in some way, and then you go through that journey and create something. So some of the exciting things that I've been working on was to help a HR recruitment tech to build a platform. It's a company called Future Match, and I'm a chief product officer for that startup. I've also worked a lot in the renewable energy sector, which is something I'm really passionate about, especially now that we talked a lot about sustainability and changes. And some of the work I've done there include helping a startup, pretty much startup founder, which is solo founder, go from being fully employed, joining an incubator, coming out of an incubator, leaving his job, and now we're looking at setting the team and see how we're going to continue going forward. And I've also done some startup advisory for another entrepreneur who also wanted to start up on her own in this idea of renewable energy. And she's now part of the Carbon 13 incubator, which is also very, very exciting. And I guess in addition to that, I do a lot of work and consultations with other startups. I've had some in the aviation industry and much more. And I love doing, of course, the show, The Startups, Mary Poppins of Startups, where I have a chance to really talk about the startups. Now, some of the main challenges I've seen, especially because I work with people a lot, I usually start with solo founders all the way to, well, whenever they become co-founders or even if they start as co-founders. But the main challenging I deal with, first one, too much to do and little money or little time, which is very, very, it's something that happened a lot when it comes to startups. Then we have the stress of delaying products. This one, especially when we've already got some kind of prototype or they work on their own, they have a prototype and they have some kind of seed round or pre-seed round. Now they have investors and you have that different type of pressure that you have to deal with. You have your board of directors that you're responding to. You have maybe clients already lined up that are eager to try your products, but things are not going well. And that's a lot of stress that a lot of startups deal with. We have issues with delivering projects, or let's say non-delivering projects, because things are all over the place, right? Lack of processes and structure. So that's another level of stress that I also deal with. The final one I would say are also people issues, right? Because I think that's another huge challenge for startup founders, because most of the time founders come from industry roles, and now suddenly you are responsible for a lot of people. And we're talking from onboarding, recruiting, making sure that they are embedded in the company and more. The final one, which I don't know whether it should be called a challenge or not, but I love mentioning that, is that feeling of being alone, especially if you're a solo founder. And I love being the person that can be there to bounce off ideas with them, and to even just send them a message on a Monday, on a Friday, and says, just keep going. I'm here for you.
Yeah, really good point. I think we all need someone like that. I mean, we know that the word that entrepreneurs hear the most is no. And when you're all
Yes.
facing these challenges of non-delivery, over pressure, under time, and being alone, it's a very lonely place. And having someone you can speak to, who understands, who says, no, keep going, you're doing well, it's okay, just dust yourself off and try again, is really, really important.
Yeah, that's for sure.
So you mentioned also about kind of the drive towards sustainability. Are you seeing more businesses now starting right? And by that, I mean, instead of trying to retrofit sustainability, which can be very difficult to do it later on, but actually embedding sustainability from the start?
Yes, this is becoming a very, very important topic. And in fact, whether a startup might not think about that a lot more when they first start, it's something that will hit them or slam them on the face the moment they want to start finding investors and also finding customer. Sustainability is one of the things that we cannot ignore anymore. A lot of the time, whenever you go to investors, especially most investors are now moving and becoming more socially responsible investors. They will ask you questions. It's not just about your products anymore. Of course, that's still very important, but it's really about the people, the planet, and profit. So can you show us that you have the right people within your team that are going to help you deliver on your dreams? Yes, profit, of course, no point explaining that, but there's also the impact on the planet. And the reason why I mentioned the impact on the planet is because sometimes as founders, depending on where you stand or how technical you are, we sometimes see technology as, oh, I just go online, I logged in here. Am I really affecting the planet if I'm offering a service? But if you think about it this way, a lot of new products that are being launched uses technology like blockchain and data, AI, and all of that. And in order to run this high amount of data, the processing powers, you need data centers and farms that use a huge amount of energy. Data used to be deleted when it's over, whereas now nobody deletes data anymore. So that is creating it's a huge impact on the environment. Up until now, a lot of people have been working so hard on, talking about fashion and how to change fashion. We've been talking about food, recycling, and I think that now the focus is slowly changing, and the tech industry is now becoming also a lot more aware. So I think as a startup, in a way, startups are in a good position because they don't have the baggage of companies and the infrastructure that means that making decision to become sustainable is difficult. On the other side, they do struggle maybe with budget or time and how they can make it happen. So yes, there's a lot of talks that is really happening, and a lot of startups are planning from the strategical aspects on their business. They're really thinking about that and how to address these issues. And you can also sometimes see that even in their marketing online.
Very well said, Nelly. You're absolutely right. From my experience as well, people, profit, and the planet has become a really a right to or license to operate. It's not going to be what gets you the investment or makes your business, but it's going to stop you from getting investments or break your business. It's become what good business is about. It's the foundation on which everything else will rest. And looking more broadly at how you're delivering your product and service and the impact on people and planet from that is as important as the product itself. but also starting to look at unintended consequences. Sometimes we see it particularly in the food sector, where you're trying to do good in one side, like for example, have more efficient farming, but that results in loss of biodiversity as you standardize a lot of things and so on. So thinking more broadly about people and planet is really important.
And I love the example that you've mentioned just now, about just thinking you making an impact here, but what's happening there. That's remind me of one of the talks at South Summit when I was moderating some of the panels, and there was this talk about circularity, which is a word that a lot of people are talking about these days. Of course, it existed before, but is now on the forefront of a lot of discussions. And that's also very important. And I see that a lot as a startup. Some of the challenges that they have is that I'm trying to source suppliers very cheaply, especially at the very beginning. But if you are not thinking about the impact in terms of circularity, are you actually, what is your impact on the planet aspects of what you are building?
Yeah, absolutely. Circularity, that's a really good word to think about. Like, are we keeping things? And I mean, circularity is all about not creating waste as much as possible. The other good word is regenerative. And this is really, are you leaving people and the planet a little bit better than when you started your operations? And I think if you keep the two things in mind, that's really good compass guiding points for a startup. So I think we've kind of gone quite a bit into dealing with the challenges of solo founders, their challenges on their own, setting it up right, juggling all these operational objectives and stresses with their more strategic one, their people, their planet. I think that really highlights that solo founders need others to work with them, because we're all human, we're not superhuman. A, we can't do it all very well, and B, eventually we'll break if we try. So how do you move solo founders to teams?
Yeah, it's a very, very good question, and a very good point on you cannot do it alone. And in fact, this is an experience, something I went through myself, starting my own company and realizing very quickly that no, you need a team. I think there are quite a few challenges that solo founders have when it comes to expanding. First, of course, they need a team, and they might not have the budget to be able to hire the right people that they have in the team. But one of the things I see solo founders doing well, and whenever I work with them, is really about finding people, other entrepreneurs out there that are also itching to go on the journey. One thing to remember is that there are many people who want to look at being an entrepreneur or working in a startup or creating something, but they might not feel like they want to be the CEO, be the face, or be the head of the company. Because like I always say, there's a lot of different types of entrepreneurship. You don't need to have a title like CEO or any kind of title anyway. So if you are a solo founder and you are really, really struggling on your own, first, yes, you shouldn't be on your own, and go out there and find the communities. There are a lot of amazing communities around the world where you will find like-minded people, and your network will also help you find other people that might want to join you. In fact, for those who want a lot more detailed information on how to build your founding team, we did an episode on that on our podcast. It's also on our blogs, then please check our channels. The other thing I would say in terms of solo founders as well is think a little as well about advisors. In addition to entrepreneurs and networking and seeing if they want to join you, especially in the early stage, to help you, having advisors will help you have this space where you can say, I am snowed under, or you can say, I'm having a really bad week, or I have problems with my team. Anything that you want to express that is obviously business related and personal, because the two goes hand to hand, and just have someone there to think and talk through ideas. I've seen a lot of startup founders that when they work with their teams, they really struggle when they are dealing with conflicts, which is something that happens a lot. By having an advisor, a mentor, or someone that you trust, where you can talk through the issues, they can help you and coach you, develop the leadership skills that you need to move forward and work with your team. So it's very, very, very important that you find groups of people that are going through the same journeys. You can even create masterminds on your own, right? So if you know other struggling solo founders out there, give them a call and say, hey guys or women, can we just, meet once a week or once every 2 weeks over a cup of coffee or a very short calls where we keep each other accountable and just talk so that we can deal, with our frustration, exhaustion, and make sure that we are looking after our mental health.
Yeah, absolutely. I'm a big fan of these masterminds. I think, as it says, masterminds in plural, the more, when you've got even one or two other people going through the same thing and you can share experiences and insights and just a fresh pair of eyes on your whatever issues and challenges you're working with, it's just phenomenal.
Yeah,
So
definitely.
if we're saying, okay, we've got the founder, they've now found their like-minded teams, and I wonder if you ever talk to them about needing the hustler, the hacker, and the hipster type mentality. So they need to decide, because most
Yeah.
people don't tend to want to be the hustler. Do you ever use that phrase?
I don't know. I don't really use that phrase when I speak to them, but definitely I understand the concept of the different energies and mind space that you need to have. And for me, the way I see that, the way I try to explain that to my team is that it's kind of like you need someone who's like, thinking about the people who always generate a lot of ideas because, especially that tends to be the founders themselves. And you might need someone that's very technical, do the groundwork. You need someone who is really good at keeping everything together because there are people who have that skill set where they can absorb a large amount of information and help you organize yourselves regardless of the size of the team. And that's also very important. I find those people are also good at counteracting the over ambitious founders who have a lot of ideas and they don't think about, yeah, but there's an implementation step that comes with that. What is the impact? And when it comes to also the hustlers, I see them a bit more as well as like the business development. Some of the issues I found, because I work a lot with founders that come from a technical background. I guess, I used to be a software engineer and there's a bit of an affinity there. And my struggles relate a lot to their struggles when it comes to business development. Most of us don't like marketing, sales. I like to say as it is, it's a pen. I don't want to say that is a miracle device that will make you sign letters the best way, right? But unfortunately, when you are selling your products, technical people, we are too absorbed with the qualities and the aspects of what we are building, right? The specification. And yes, it's a beautiful car, but if I'm a mother and I've got two young kids, tell me how the car is going to protect my kids or make it easier for me to put my the pram or the pushchair in the car and out. So those are the things where you need to get out of yourselves. So if you're very, very technical and you're not it's not your strong point, when you are looking at your founding team and the energy you need in your team, you need that person that love going out, connecting, finding clients, and putting you on the map.
Yeah, absolutely. Again, very well said. Yeah, you need those balances, and they're different personalities. And that again highlights why you need more than one person, because you're unlikely to be the detailed person and the person that's out there schmutzing and charismatic. If nothing else, how many hours in a day do you have to do that? So,
Yeah.
okay, assuming then, the team is well balanced, you've now got a good team, your product or service is starting to get traction, you can look at yourself and go, okay, we're doing all right. I think it's time to grow. What challenges and what do startup founders worry about as they prepare to scale?
Yes. And first recognize it's a great place because one thing I love about I love about even my own journey about running your own business. There's always this feeling of wow, I've just got there. Oh, there's more to go, right? Like when I was doing my planning for the next business year for my business, because it's 3 years and 1 year for my podcast, I'm thinking, yes, I'm excited. I've been doing this for a year. I'm like, yeah, but what's next? So it's nice to take a break to, celebrate that moment. But once the celebration is over, the three things that are always in the minds in the startup leaders when it's coming to grow and scale, of course, I'm saying three, there's a lot more, but to simplify it, I will mention three things: the structure, culture, and of course, business development, which we talked a little bit about. So when it comes to structure, as you are scaling your business, first you're going to bring a lot of people in your company, and you are going to do a lot more development of your products, whether it's engineering, software engineering, or whatever it is. When it comes to software engineering, if you don't know what you've been doing and how you've been doing things and documenting, some of the issue that you will have in terms of coding is what we call technical debt. How did you code your system or build your product in a way where you are taking shortcuts and eventually it catches up with you because you've been patching over the cracks, and the foundation is not quite there. So that is something that if you are not aware of all of those compromises that you've made along the way, because nothing is ever documented, as you scale, it's going to be very painful. Talking about structure, one of the reasons why a lot of startups struggle or becomes a little bit, I feel like you're on fire all the time, even more so than before, is because it's a fast-paced environment and the focus is on move, do what we need to do. We have a pitch tomorrow, investors or the team, we need to do this. It's always on the go. So it's really important that when you first start, you really think about what kind of basic processes and a healthy dose of structure, as I was calling it when I was training a startup in Valencia in Spain a few weeks ago. It's not about Prince 2 or PMP or all of those. When you say it's project governance, people are like, "Oh, it's a dirty word. We are a startup. We are agile." But even agile requires some elements of structure together. The basic things, if you want us to continue being friends, is to make sure that you do simple things like record your meetings. The number of time people go to meetings and never record them and then wonder what was agreed. Record decisions, risks. A lot of people will start working without even coming together and think about what are the risks of what we're going to do. And some, worse, don't even come together and start thinking about the plan, right? Again, I'm not talking about Microsoft Gantt chart that you might be worried about, but just getting the team together to really think about the different steps, use Post-it notes to kind of create a plan, a very high-level plan, and then put it on a tool for tracking. The other part of structure is when you start looking at OKRs and goals. Yes, the company changes quickly. You need to make sure that as you are changing directions, the goals that were associated with old direction are eliminated. What tends to happen is that there is a mismatch of people not knowing whether what they are working on is still valid for now or has changed. So how do your team feel a sense of purpose and a sense of, I still want to stay here in this company if I don't know how my work is influenced where we are going? So those are some of the few things to think about when it comes to structure. And I honestly, if you do look at them, it will really help you if you are struggling to delay with your product or projects. Usually, one of the first things I look at when a company asks me to jump in is the structure. Do you have the right contracts in place? Do you have the right, how are you managing everything? Do you even know whether your people are overworked more than you think you know, right? So structure will help. So the second thing is the culture. And the culture is, for me, the culture is everything. As you grow, your culture of your company can be influenced. And I think we'll talk more about culture later on, but because I think there's a huge topic that I'm really passionate about. But I highly recommend people to really start thinking about the culture of a startup before they scale, whereas most people think about it afterwards. And that can cause a problem. And the last part is when we talk about business development, as we talked a little bit about that earlier on. But when it comes to problems with scaling, is making sure that you can pay the people that are working for you. So the team will grow, and you don't want to be in a position where you hire a lot of people in year one and year two, you fire half of the team just to keep going. Of course, like they say, sometimes there's nothing you can do. And if you have to do it the right way. But you need to also think a little bit about how do we have the right foundations for our business development, and how are our teams, not just the founder and the CEO, do we get enough support for the founding team members to help us, in addition to the sales team, to knock on doors, get new clients, and more importantly, network and get the word out there. Of course, not everybody can be a salesperson, but a lot of the founding team members can play a huge part in just sharing the goodness of what you are working together to the world.
Great, Nelly. Nelly, you used that word purpose again. I think we're coming back to that. What is the purpose of the organization? Being clear on what that purpose is, and that your founding team is aligned. They're not giving mixed signals on what the purpose of the organization is, but also for each person that works in that organization to feel they have purpose, that their purpose is aligned with the organizational purpose, is increasingly more important also with the younger generations. They want to do work that matters, that it matters for the organization and it matters broader than the organization. And otherwise, we're seeing this whole thing with the great resignation. Within the UK only, there's 1 million jobs unfilled because people are looking at them and saying, this isn't for me. I don't fit. It doesn't fit with my purpose, my values, and so on. So having that purpose and that structure that brings everyone, supports everyone, nurtures everyone is so critically important. And then, of course, you mentioned culture, and I think this is a good point to expand on that. Culture can be so influenced. It's funny, isn't it? And I'm sure you'll tell us more by how difficult it is to create and maintain a positive culture, and how easy it is for one person to turn a culture more negative. So Nelly, over to you. What are the good practices around creating and maintaining a positive culture?
Yes. Culture is one of the things that a lot of people talk about, but you can't really, it's more than just words. It's more, I sometimes say, it's a feeling. How people feel in your company is really, it depends on how the culture of the company is. And if you really want to continue building a really good culture of your company, I will suggest that you write down the DNA of your startup. You might not have the time to document absolutely all of the policies and regulations from an HR perspective, but the DNA is the most important one and help you to create the culture. So what do I mean by DNA? So whenever a company, obviously most companies, what they do well, especially as they start scaling, they will talk a lot about their mission, why they exist, and their purpose. They will have that on their social media, and they use that as a tool to attract new people, investment, and new clients. So that's good. The problem is there are 3 types of startups. Those who think that, who actually, as they start, they really want to make sure that their people come first and then mean it. So they invest in building a great culture from the beginning, and that can be seen in the activities that they run to get the team to work well together, as well as the way that they lead their people. So what they're worried about is losing something that they spend so much time creating. As you said, Shima, one hire that might do things differently, or one change of direction in terms of maybe the management or promotion, actually a promotion of someone into a leadership role might also affect the culture of the company. The second one, you have startups that know that they have a problem with cultures and their worry might get worse. And the third one is the one that have amazing culture. When you look at LinkedIn, they even self-declared that they are the best place to work in, when everybody in the company is looking at the time they can jump off. And, their view of dealing with the negative cultures, especially internally, and I've seen that quite a lot, is to kind of going back to this mindset of, oh, we are a startup, we work long hours, it's okay, it's part of our culture, this is how it's meant to be, the entrepreneurial lifestyle. And they use all the stories to justify the fact that they do not really focus on the people and how they can make the life of the people right. Of course, working in startups, I mean long hours, depending on what you do, but at the same time, a company with a great culture knows how to deal with that in a positive way. So when we talk about writing the DNA of your startup, it's really what matters to you, the team, and what have you created? Small things that people don't think about, right? Because I was running a training for a startup, and they already had a really good culture, so I wasn't even worried about that. But they were worried about maybe losing the culture. And small aspect of the DNA comes to, let's say, flexibility. What does flexibility mean? If you hired or you started as a remote first company and eventually you want to change to become a face-to-face company, you are changing the culture and the DNA of your company. So if this is what you want to do as you scale, how are you going to deal with that? If you are a company that says we are remote or we offer flexible hours, but you don't tell people what flexible hours mean, because I mean, now it's crazy. You get people that tell you that we are a remote company, but you have to come in the office 3 times a week, which to me doesn't even say remote. So if people in the company knows those rules that are not written anywhere else, someone else that's joining won't know anything. The way that you communicate, the different communication channels, the way that you have, some people says open door policy, or we have weekly meetings with the CEO or weekly calls with the CEO where he address the entire team, because there's 10 of us, we can go for lunch together. When you grow, the CEO might not be close to you in that sense, but there are things that you can create to simulate that at the same extent if this is what you want. But if you don't have any of this written down, that doesn't matter. And the writing down part is important, is because as you are writing down, you're also challenging what you have or what you don't have. That helps you create the conversation to build the right culture. So when we talk about growing the culture as you're scaling up, key things to bear in mind is accountability. As you start as a small team, you have strong affinities. As you grow, two things that happen. One, people get promoted. If they are promoted to the certain role, are they accountable to the delivery for themselves and for the people? If their leadership skill is not quite up to scratch, what are you doing to help them and support them on the way? Because if not, their leadership style might affect the culture of the company. And the accountability, that personally, to me, I say it applies to every single person that comes in the company. Of course, the leadership team is responsible for the culture, but if you want to work in a company that has a positive culture, you also have a role to play. So are you accountable based on your behavior? If there's a problem, do you deflect to blame or retrospectives, or retrospective, which is like the way of saying that you sit there and analyze the problems and find the right things to do? Do you finish your work when you said you were going to finish, because you impact other departments and avoid conflict? And if it didn't happen, it's life. Do you take ownership of that and talk about it and trying to see how we are sorting things? So accountability is really, really important from a self perspective and also to the management. One of the most difficult things is, of course, to let go of an employee. But if, as your company grow and scale, people realize that I can just, there are some people who have behaviors that goes against the DNA of our company, and you leave them in the company and they can stay there, still get promoted. That's a way of saying, this is what's on paper, and reality, that's not it, right? So you might as well just sabotage all the hard work that you've done to grow your culture. So yes, culture is very, very important. It's something that you really need to work on, whether you have it. I mean, I assume that you have someone in HR and someone that focuses on the people and really spend the time to understand who you want to be and how you want to grow.
Thank you, Nelly. I mean, it's so sound. It reminds us all about the need for a fit between a strategy, a structure, and a culture, because you can't say one thing and do another, or write one thing and say we're going in that direction. For example, if you have a beautifully written strategy, but your culture or your structures don't support it, it all has to come together and be quite congruent. One of the things I found quite useful, and it was really starting up with working with Faye Holland on the Impact Women's Network, when it was just her and me. And we sat down and she said, right, let's make a list of what we are and what we're not. And I have since then found that incredibly useful. It meant that even when it was just the two of us, we could communicate with others very clearly, because we both had agreed what we were and what we weren't. But as you grow and we got new members, in general, it's been really useful. And I've used it in other projects, even always sitting down with the team and saying, what are we not, and checking that we're all on the same page of understanding even just that basic thing, what we are and what we're not. And sometimes agreeing what we're not is so illuminating to the culture and the purpose of the venture.
Yeah, and I love this exercise. I'm glad you share this with us, because I believe that anyone who's listening to this talk is such a simple tool that they can take and really use with their teams today. You don't even need to be the CEO or even the manager, even just a team lead or someone part of the team. If you feel like there's a lot of issues with the team as you're working, or worse, you're working on a project team or a product team, you're managing that team, and you see there's a lot of frustration between different departments, then asking that question, who are we and what are we not, can really help you to talk to each other and connect again at the human level and forget about all of the issues that got you to that point. And once you get that connection at the human level, you go back up to the issue that says, okay, now how do we deal with this?
Yeah, exactly. And so you also mentioned risk, and it's true. I mean, even when you're applying for, particularly for grants, extending some of the startup grants, will almost always ask you about your risks. And I find that for startups and project teams, they find that writing about risks one of the hardest things. They try and brush it under, try and find a few nice sounding risks that they can manage anyway. Let's put that on and move on. But actually, truly understanding and mitigating your risks is a core entrepreneurial competence, because you're dealing with uncertainty, ambiguity in this new territory of whatever innovation you're leading. And therefore, understanding the risks and being prepared before you get knocked is really important. Taking that a step further, I found that people who are going to look at their risks are more likely and will be encouraged to look at the risks of something bad happening, but they often don't look at the risks of success. What if it all goes far better than you thought? And of course, we know that the Raspberry Pi is the classic example. They sold out their year stock on the first day of sales. I met one of the founders 6 months later, and they were still trying to deliver the first day of sales. So what do you do if you are far more successful than you imagine, or more, how do you plan for that?
Yeah, it's a very, very, very good question. Risks in terms of what if things go wrong and what if things go right. So looking at first what if things go wrong, I think I like to, when I work with teams, I like to simplify that and thinking about potholes, right? When you drive, especially if you know the area, you're trying to plan your journey, and as you're driving, you're trying to look ahead and avoid potholes because I assume you like your car. Yet when we're working in teams, sometimes we don't really think about risk. And again, when you apply for grants, especially if they tell you can only have one page of A4, you might put there the risk that you think sounds good. It's good for the application, for the grant. Yes, we know everything. But the most important thing and the strength of your startup or your project or anything that you're working on is knowing the risks that you can't mitigate. Because when those that you can't deal with, I would say it might not happen, but that you might not be able to deal with very easily. Because sitting down and talking about it, even if it's something as simple as what if we have a breach of our data centers or something like that, which might not happen because now we're using Amazon, is a lot more secure. But what if that happens? Even if you are not equipped to answer that, you could write something as simple as saying, we have X, this contact and that contact, and this is how we're going to deal with the PR strategy after that, and talk to our customers. Something simple that if the problems happen, to go somewhere and find that information. Then you go to the tactical things of really looking at what you are building, looking at different departments and how you're working with customers, and really asking yourself the tough questions. And one of the things could be, what if we don't deliver on time? A lot of people, when they plan, we always plan for the good things. But maybe as we are planning, we want to launch something in September. Like there's something I'm working with clients and the plan launch in September. And I'm thinking, right, my head is already we in June. We have the August coming up. And of course, September is not that far off. COVID is kind of around, not around. But those are still things that could affect us. What if we can't deliver? Or what if we get to the conference where we're launching, we don't have the full products? What do we do? So those are things that the more you think about that aspect of things that are not pretty, it's still important. And again, people will say, oh, why waste my time in this meeting talking about things that may never happen? It's because one day they could happen. The other thing that you've mentioned is also very, very important. And that's something I love stressing to people when they are getting close to launching or thinking that they want to onboard customer, even if it's just a pilot. What if it goes well, right? What if you have a lot of people coming into your door? How do you ramp up quickly? What if you are launching your pilots and because everything is online, a lot of people will make the assumption that the first customer will be in the towns where they live or in the country they live. What if the person is in the same continent, which is fine, but what if it's someone in another continent? If you don't have any support system, if there's only 5 people, you're running a pilot with 10 teams, and you're assuming that only 2 will like your product, you might not give yourself the room to grow. So it could be something as simple, even if it's like a shift calendar or schedule of during X amount of weeks or after the launch, we need to have this person working here to manage this inbox or to manage this. We need to have something in place for feedback so that even if the people can't get through to us, they have something to help them write to us and let us know of issues. This is how we're going to respond. So a template response in case something great happened and you have to send messages very quickly. So doing those things, you might think it might never happen to me, but most of the time when great things happen, most people are not prepared because they never thought that it could happen. So it's really important to also look at the risk from the sense of opportunity. So the risk of something good that could happen to you as well.
Absolutely. Being ready to, navigate the potholes or grab the opportunities, because you don't want to let people down when they get so excited about what you're doing. So thinking on both sides. So what mistakes have you seen where organizations struggle to deliver to their customers? What results in that and what can they do about it?
Yeah. So that's a tough one, but sadly it happens a lot more than you think. And this is kind of why I decided, to just jump in and call myself the Mary Poppins of startups. For some reason, I'm like a bee to the honey of organizations that are in trouble, and I just love getting there and kind of deal with that. The first thing that I see, and I guess in a way, it's my motivation of putting myself in such a stressful environment to start with. But the first thing I see is how people are, they feel powerless, they feel demotivated, and they don't want to work. It actually happens to me as one of the clients I had. They had a team of product manager. It was a fantastic team to be, and especially the senior were very, very capable. By the time I started working in the company, one of the senior product manager was about to launch a product, told me I'm about to leave, and I was running the team as head of product, and I thought, if you leave now, we're screwed, right? And this is something that people underestimate, the impact and the pressure that cooks up in an environment where you have to deliver to clients, but we can't do that, and there are internal challenges. The second pressure is usually when it comes to those who have already taken either investments from investors, whether you're talking angel investors or VCs, or those who have got money from customers they have to deliver on a certain date. That adds another level of pressure to the leadership team because, of course, the last thing anybody wants is their board of directors to dictate what you have to do in your company, to tell you who you have to hire, who you shouldn't hire, or making technical decisions, because as a CEO, you will feel powerless, even more so if you are CEO and founder or co-founder. So all of that pressure, the reason why I think that pressure is bad is because, of course, pressure comes down. When you can't think clearly, you become reactive, and anything that you are doing in a company becomes kind of obfuscated. You don't know whether you are following into your strategy because it provides value, or you are reacting to the pressure that takes you to a wrong direction. So those are some of the things to bear in mind when it comes to being in an environment where nothing is happening, things are delayed. Before you can even start tackling the technical aspect of why we are not launching these projects, think about the company as a whole. One of the things I see, or one of the things I do, is when I start the company, I will work, if I'm assigned a team that I'm also managing, I go in the first session with the team and I sit down and I says, okay, talk. Anything that's gone wrong is not about blame or judging. Just tell me how you feel. And a lot of the things is usually about and one of the things I find a lot is if you are delayed but at least 6 months, at least 2 or 3 of your leaders or product managers knew about it. And either you didn't listen to them or they didn't tell you because they're scared of you. So that happens all the time, right? So then we start looking into that. Why do they not feel in power? Well, maybe they did mention, but there was something else. So, for example, there was a team where there was a lot of clash with the marketing team. Then my job was, whilst I was still dealing with my team, and I thought, guys, we need to plan better. But on the higher level, I started working the marketing team and understand why is it there's a constant clash between marketing and products, and then customer service and says, oh, by the way, we don't like product team either because they never deliver and we don't know what to do. Then as you work with all of those team and understand what are the issues, like, oh, customer service, you want regular updates. Why is it not regular updates? Going back to what I said earlier about, is a healthy dose of structure. If there's no structure on the team and no way for people to share updates on projects that they're working on, they have the weight of having to knock on every single door to tell them what's happening. You could do that easily, but having a page online, there are so many tools that allows you to put an information of what you are working on, the status, what is going well, what is going wrong, and just update it weekly. Those who want to find out, finds out. And at right intervals, if you plan what you're working on, you plan milestones and checkpoints where you physically go and update everybody else. Something like that, when we implemented in the company, suddenly people were giving me tea and coffee as if I did anything more than just getting other people even to write the documentation for them, right? So it's very, very simple, but because we move, and we don't think about having those little things in place, when things blow out, they blow out of proportion because we didn't have the basics. Then it comes, once you deal with all of those issues, once I'm doing that at the highest level of the company, I sit down with my team and say, what's led us to these moments, right? Are we doing too much? I've seen a lot of teams that, especially, whether you're a startup or not, you've outsourced your development to another external company and you have the product, the development in-house. You have 2 products that you are building, or maybe 1 product that have 2 different components, but 1 development team. Just as you will do in sales, when you have a lot of customers coming through finals and only a few comes here, you have the same with engineering. You want all of those features at the top, but if you only have X amount of developers that will write the code for you, there's nothing you can do about it, right? Knowing that in advance, we talk about risks, right? It will help you plan better and avoid being late, or a contingency plan, which means at certain intervals when we are doing our development, we increase the capacity so that we do more work. And then we, especially if you have an outsourced team, they will say, we give you more engineers for 6 months. And then after that, you go back to the number of, I don't know how many you had before. So those are things that you can do. And for anyone who's really struggling with their product and thinking, how do I go from, wow, everybody's screaming, or maybe people are not screaming per se, but you feel an atmosphere, or you feel like we don't really know, we don't even know why things are not going well. How do I dissect, from the interpersonal to the conflict to the technical, the platform, the projects, all of those aspects? Well, I'm giving you a free gift. If you go on my website, especially on the homepage, there is, towards the end, I've put in a free gift, a document, about 10 pages checklist that shows you how day by day, in 30 days, 60 days, 90 days, where you can go through all the processes that I go through with clients. Again, I was very transparent there. It's not something that you will check in. There is even, for those who love ticking boxes, my team was amazing. They put some checkbox there for you to go through. And also because I talk about milestones, we also highlighted the milestones of where you want to be on the way. So yeah, so just to summarize, if you are in a situation where you are struggling to deal with your product because they're not launching, please avoid the temptation of training more engineers or more technical people or things like that. Take a sit back first, look at the organization and the underlying factors, talk to the people, one-to-one interviews, workshops, deal with what is really happening and the impact on the organization, because some of it can help you create, a breathing room to maintain those who might want to leave. And whilst you're doing that, really start replanning with the team, being very honest. As I said about when we talk about the culture earlier, it's not about blame, but it's also about accountability, right? So you want to have the two dancing alongside each other.
And commitment and accountability are right up kind of at the top of the pyramid of high performance teams. If you
Yes.
want to deliver, you want to go that extra mile, you want to do it, it is about a team that trusts each other, that is pulling in the same direction, that's committed and that's accountable. Otherwise, it all hobbles around. So your examples really illuminated that. I think it's probably the subject for another podcast, but you touched on that relationship with the board, and that's
Yeah.
so important because I've seen so many boards trying to get hands on, and when you say, well, actually, no, your role is governance and helping with strategy, there is a founding and a management and an executive team, and that's not you. And I think that's a really good place. But given how the time we've got left today, it's probably not an entire subject to open, but if you've got any quick reflections, I think it's worth saying something about and then leading into a fuller discussion at another time.
Yes, I'm so glad you've mentioned it, Shima. We didn't even talk about this when we were planning this session, but we are very connected. So, yes, I mean, this topic is really, really important, and it's something that it has been in the back of my mind for a while. How do I bring more conversations to help startups to deal with their board, whether they've already have one or they are looking for one? And in fact, there's two things to bear in mind. So, what can I do in terms of the relationship and clarity that I have with the board members? But it comes from when you found the board members in the first place. When you are looking for investment, what kind of board members were you looking for? There are some investors that want to be silent partners. They've got their money, they're checking in. Are you doing okay? Great. Otherwise, see you whenever. There are others who wants to be involved, and those who wants to be involved might want to kind of direct the company. So how do you have those discussions even before? And then you also have, especially when it comes to angel investors, if it's their first gig or their first 2 years as an angel investors, some of them get nervous when things don't go according to plans and then start breathing down your neck. So when you are looking for investors, think about all of those criteria. We're not going to say a lot more about that, but something exciting is happening. This summer, I think July, August, just check our socials. We have a special edition. I think it's 3 or 4 episodes where they're going to be short, to the point, and we are going to dive in this topic of board members. So it's going to be just about finding your board, working with your board, and also working with incubators, because sometimes you go in an incubator or an accelerator, and one of the representatives becomes a board in your company. So we will have a woman called Janie Irvine from Raise Ventures. They're based in Northern Ireland in Belfast. And we will have a lot of questions. She will really talk us through, imagine having an investor on the show. She is an active investor, and we will ask her any question that we have on this topic. So if you are listening to that, you are struggling with your board or with your investors, and you really want to get those questions answered, or you love them for now and you want to continue loving them in the future, do tune in later on this summer to find out more.
Brilliant. Yeah, absolutely. Do tune in for that. I think that sounds invaluable. I'd like to share one piece of advice that I was given by a venture capitalist many, many years ago called Maria. And she said, when you're choosing an investor, imagine that you would spend 8 hours in a car with them on a car journey. If you get a feeling of dread or any sort of negative feeling from that, they're not the investors for you. If that fills you with joy and excitement, that's the investor for you. And I think sometimes startups forget that it's a two-way thing with their investors. They're not out there begging money. It is a relationship, and you need to enter it where you are as keen on them as they are on you. And I've since then thought about this 8-hour car journey test as a really good test for when you're taking on a founder as well, or your first employee, because it is a very intimate relationship. And if you can't stand the idea of spending 8 hours in a car with them, then don't get into business with them.
Yeah, Exactly. That's the right way of putting that. If 8 hours is too much, just don't work with them. Because I mean, running a company, especially starting, in a startup with all of the challenges, is such an exciting experience. From my own journey of starting my own company, but at the same time, it has a lot of highs and lows. So you want people that even if you are driving and you are going through the lows, they are going to stay in the car with you for the next 8 hours. Yeah.
Absolutely. What a lovely
Yeah.
ending kind of comment as we bring this to close. But before we do, what next for Athena Leaders?
Yeah, it's I'm really excited. I'm about to start my fourth year of running Athena Leaders, and my role when I first started, I told myself I'm going to give myself 5 years to play and find my home, and then I'm going to settle in that home afterwards. Because for me, play is a big thing, and I also talk about that. So as what I'm going to look at next is now, of course, I love startups, and I'm passionate about it, and I'm really going to grow into there. One of the things I've realized as well is because I lead a double life. So I live in Madrid and I live in Cambridge. Is really has opened my eyes into this idea of growing an ecosystem. The startup ecosystem is really strong in the UK, Cambridge. Cambridge is amazing for that, which really helped me nurture my entrepreneurial spirit. London and so many other hubs. Now I'm wondering, is there more that I can do to really connect those ecosystems through my podcast, through my work when I speak at conferences like I was speaking at South Summit? Is there something more that I can do? Whilst at the same time continue to work with startups. For me, again, as part of my 5 years journey, I work with startups, sometimes at the advisory role, or I sit there and says, okay, you go into this challenge with your team, of your project, your products, whatever it is. I roll up my sleeve 2-3 days a week. I'm happy to work with you. So this is something that I really want to continue to do, as I've still got 2 more years to play with startups. And in fact, for anyone watching, if you are a startup or a startup that's struggling, co-founder or especially solo founder, get them to get in touch with me as soon as possible. I'm running a special promotion this summer. Summer is usually a little bit quiet on my side. Well, I say that, but then things happen. But it's usually quite quiet because a lot of people go on holiday. It gives me a lot of time to focus on fewer startups. So if you fancy an hour or an hour and a half kind of discussions, for free, just for discussion, for you to bounce out ideas and help you deal with some of the challenges, then get in touch with me. I actually had a call yesterday, and it was about someone who's working in the augmented reality, and we really looked at what she needs to do in terms of positioning her messaging, moving away from just talking about the technology, and how she can get to her customers and also think about the future of her company. So anyone out there looking for that 1 hour and a half chats, please let me know. I will be in the UK for sometimes in summer as well. So I'm happy to have coffees for if anyone who might wants to as well.
Ah, that's fantastic. And from coffee to tea, Nelly, I'd like to do a
Yes.
quick plug for one of our entrepreneurs. For the eagle-eyed of you, you'll have noticed I was drinking iced tea through this, and it's actually this tea. It's humanity, created by a woman in London, Tina Chen, and it is kind of embodies what we were talking about, that solo entrepreneur that has the idea, that brings people around her, embedding and starting right. This is an oat milk tea. It's low sugar, and I don't know if you're going to be able to see this, but it says infinitely recyclable on it here. And so this is a sustainable business, a sustainable tea, a refreshment, an adult drink that replaces really milk heavy products. And Tina is an alumni of our program called We Lead Food, which again fits in quite nicely with our discussion today, where women from across the food system, whether they're in research or industry, startups, policy, NGOs, charities, come together to explore how they can lead collectively through cooperation, collaboration, and co-creation to transform the food sector to a more sustainable, healthy, and inclusive one. And, as we were told, everything we've heard from Nelly today was about that need for diversity of our teams, of our people, of our networks, because the world is facing so many diverse problems. We need that diversity of thought to tackle them. So, ladies, please join us in the second half of this year for We Lead if you're passionate about leading sustainability.
Yeah, and I echo what Shima said. Really, it is a fantastic program. Thanks, Shima, for introducing me to Really 3 years ago. And honestly, the feeling of being part of a community and being part of feeling supported, going on your journey and launching a product which humanity is now being will be sold in avocado very soon, which is a huge milestone. So imagine going from nothing to going there or getting to that milestone, but knowing that you are not alone on your journey and having people support you on your way.
Absolutely. And you've been such a supporter of the program, Nelly, a fantastic contribution. We look forward to your contributions every year. And thank you for all your very valuable thoughts and advice today as well through this podcast. I hope people will share or rewatch because it was a wealth of information and very much worth a re-listen, rewatch, and unpacking everything you said today. Thank you
Thanks
very
a lot, Shima.
much, Nelly. And that brings us to the end of our time. Do you have any other closing remark before we say goodbye to everybody?
One final one, do remember to get the new checklist for your company on my website. But more importantly, let's design a happy and productive workplace playground together.
Hear, hear. Thank you, Nelly. Bye, everybody.